I am way too harsh for most of the Jewish organizations. They want people, and they loved inviting me as long as I was saying what everybody wanted to hear. I speak better Hebrew than most American Jewry from the Upper West Side, okay? They know their shul Hebrew, okay, fine. I know more about Jewish history than most of them. And it's not to be cocky, but just as a pure fact. I am never gonna be part of the group. I can be admired to be an ally, but eventually, it's the Jews together. I can get mad. It hurts sometimes, obviously, as a human, but I can get mad, or I can understand the beauty of it and actually wish that my own people, even just the Hungarians, would be such a close-knit that, you would go to fire for the other. And so most people would translate it as negative, instead of saying that, hey, actually, I'm freaking fucking jealous of the Jews that they can, meet in the middle of Nicaragua and then have a Shabbat dinner and become friends for life. I wish we would have that. Instead, two Hungarians meet in the same city and they would be like, I don't know you.
This is the Jew Function episode 110, I believe. Wow. Yes, we made it this far. How are you, Seth?
I'm good. It's what a journey we've been on. I just got back from Brazil on Monday morning, 5 a.m. And as we were being held up in customs, you can see on Fox News behind us, Trump was entering the Knesset. Yeah. And we started this before October 7th, didn't we? We did, like a year before or something.
Dude, oh my God,
we started this while you were still in Brooklyn.
I was still in Brooklyn. It was 2020. We started the podcast when Jews started to wake up to the fact that anti-Semitism has taken a turn for the worse after many years where it's been, the U.S. was just the golden Medina for the Jews, as some of them said to us. And we started the podcast. We went through the mystery book, which, by the way, if you're new to the Jew Function, you are more than welcome to sample the first 22 episodes. I would just binge the whole first season, 22 episodes.
Explain what's there for anyone who doesn't know.
We're simply going through a timeline, a chronological timeline from the times of Abraham, really all the way to the establishment of of Israel, and we're trying to unpack era by era what was actually happening, what was happening in the world, and in parallel, what was the Jewish history like. And we're trying to show that there are if you connect enough dots, you start to see patterns, and those patterns help you explain what might be the root cause of anti-Semitism. And the historic patterns themselves are not enough. As we go through, we are reading from this mystery book, which you can follow, and we reveal in the end what it is. And we read great quotes from historians who've explored this, from Jewish leaders, from notable anti-Semites, and also from Jewish sages. And we're putting together I think a novel picture of the relationship between the Jews and the world. And what we're trying to show is that Jewish hate doesn't happen in isolation. It's a recurring phenomenon, so much so that it conforms to laws of nature. It's part of the laws of nature that govern the system we're in. So it
requires understanding who are the Jews,
who we are.
Also, what is the goal of humanity? If we're just here like pushing carbon around into a shape of a solar panel, now let's shape it into a computer chip, now let's shape it into a car. So we're not getting to the root of what the goal of humanity is. And if we understand what the goal of humanity is that we're all moving towards being one family together, governed by love. So then this unique, weird third wheel called Israel enters the picture, and what role do these people play? And without asking that question, what is the goal of humanity? We can't even begin to understand the problem and how to solve the problem.
Precisely. So we're taking a bird's eye view. It's not even a bird. I think it's more of a space shuttle view of humanity. and this unique grouping in humanity called Jews. And when you take out the emotion out of it, and when you take a longer view of things, then you start to see the picture beyond the current conflict, the current hateful flare up somewhere, beyond even beyond terrible things like the October 7th massacre and the recent release of the hostages, all momentous events. But how do they fit within the big picture? That's what we do here on the Jew Function podcast, and that's the only place where you'll find this information. So if you like it, please give it a listen. If you really like it, comment. This really helps to bring this conversation to the forefront, which is really what we want. We want more people to hear it, to consider these ideas, and together maybe a new picture of us will emerge, and with it a new picture of humanity and the world. So that's really the main thing we're asking for, and I think this is something that people who are following us, so they see the value in that. And they support us in these ways. So that's really what we're asking people to do. And as we were going through this, we're meeting on this show. We're meeting all kinds of really interesting people, amazing people who are part of this growing circle. Because for us, Jews are not simply those who have a certain something written in their birth certificate. Yeah, exactly. It's not a DNA. It's something you could call it a spiritual DNA if you're inclined to think in this way. You can think of it as something more holistic. That's why you have people who are not Jews at all waking up with this feeling of identification with the Jews. You have people who are not Jews at all in the weirdest places around the world.
Maybe it's time to mention at this stage of history that when the first temple was destroyed, 10 of the tribes were sent into exile. As much as in modern history, as much as Jews try and assimilate, it's impossible.
Impossible.
We can't. Yeah.
Not only is it possible, it's also unhelpful. It's not like assimilation helped us. None of the things we do to fight anti-Semitism, by the way, helped us, which is another interesting point.
But back during when the first temple was destroyed and those 10 tribes went into exile, a completely different phenomenon happened. They completely disappeared. And so today, there must be several 100 million or 1 billion people who wouldn't show up on a DNA record as Jew, but all over Asia, all over Europe, all over Africa, all over the world, South America, there's people from these tribes that were exiled all those years ago. And we're at the point now where we start to see, as this feeling starts, like this dormant sparks start to rise, like some kind of magnet above humanity, like pulling them out. We'll start to see this kind of ingathering of the exiles kind of thing.
Precisely, and if you're still like scratching your head about it, you can think of it differently. All of humanity today, everybody's alive today, can be traced to almost one original, set of parents. So we are already related and interconnected, and that feeling of interconnectedness is bubbling to the surface. Again, not the genetics of it, but really the deeper feeling that we are somehow related on a deeper level to one another. We influence each other immensely, and our lives are really dependent on one another in many ways. So there's a lot of that you can also hear on the show. And I think that is why it's not surprising when every once in a while we have on the show someone who's has this unusual passion for the Jewish people, and we see those people get up and stand up by the Jewish people, the Jewish nation. Almost they go out on this crusade for no apparent reason. Also, it seems, I'm sure there's a reason, and today's guest is one of those people. She's actually someone that I've been following for a while. She's many things. She's a journalist. She's a commentator. I think she was a former diplomat. She survived 2 terror attacks in Europe before she moved to the U.S. and she speaks on immigration and human rights and cultural issues. But But most of all, what's interesting to us is she's very vocal about the Jewish issue, the Jewish question, and she's a tremendous ally to Jewish communities in Israel and abroad. And she lives now in New York. I think she was named among top Zionist voices in America by Hadassah organization. She lives in New York and she works for the JNF. And we're really, really happy to bring her to the Jew Function podcast to talk about the future of humanity and the Jews in it. Virág Gulyás, please join us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yes. So, as I mentioned in your bio, you have a really interesting bio, really diverse, like it's quite unusual. So
that's for sure.
Exactly, but I'm wondering. So I'm wondering at what point in your life did you did your life converge with
Jews?
Yeah, with the Jewish line. I mean, why on earth? Maybe you can tell us about that. That would be very interesting to hear.
Indeed.
Maybe even start a little bit before.
Start before you were born, and then
before I was born. Yes,
and then slowly move into it, and
Okay, so let's get started somewhere. So, look, I was born in 1985, and it matters for the perspective and the complexities of one's life, right? 85, Eastern Europe, post-communism, the Russians just left us. We don't have internet. We barely have television. And I grew up in this era. So I was 6, 7 when the Russians left. And in hindsight, you grow up with what your environment is projecting onto you. And eventually in Hungary, you grew up on 3 types of jokes: the Jewish jokes, the blonde women, and the Polish jokes. And it is engraved in you, and it doesn't make you hateful. It just makes you, stereotypical. So fast forward, and how your question started, I was 26 when I lived in Brussels, in the capital of Belgium. And there was an Israeli fellow I worked with. I worked for an Israeli company at that point, and he asked me on a date. And I was like calling my mom, I'm not sure. He's Jewish. On top of it, he's Israeli. It's like, I'm filled with all the stereotypes. And today it's hard to imagine because, today everything is on social media. So only people who really don't want to know things don't know things. But back then, how I grew up, it was very different. We didn't grow up with knowing who was a Jewish author or who is a Jewish poet. We just knew Hungarians, and that's it. And also it took me a lot, and now I'm going a little bit ahead of myself, but I did a master's in Jewish studies, and there I understood more and more about why Eastern Europeans have this underlying antisemitism even after the Holocaust, and we can get into that. But to stay with the question, so I was 26 when my life pivoted, and eventually I did go on a date with that fellow. I was in a relationship with that Israeli for 6 years. I give credit to him for my first domino falling in my life regarding Israel, but the relationship didn't work out. I didn't turn back to be a stereotypical anti-Semite, regardless of the heartbreak. But it definitely changed and pivoted my life. Look, he took me to Israel for the first time. Since then, I was back 26 times. And every time, there is something that I'm peeling off of my onion. And the first 2 times, I was so reluctant to even go to Israel. So he would attest to that I was like, there are too many Jews there. And again, here for you to understand where I'm coming from, I was a classical ballet dancer first and foremost. So that was my first
classical belly dancer?
Yeah. So like with a tutu and a point shoes and everything.
No, ballet, not belly.
Yeah, not belly, but ballet. I know it's an accent confusion.
I mean,
happens often, I know. So my school, the ballet school, was in the heart of the Jewish district in Hungary. So my idea of Jews were everyone is an Orthodox Jew, and that's it.
Pina Bausch was Hungarian,
yes.
right?
So, yes.
We
so that was, my idea, and I didn't know any better. So I didn't even want to go to Israel, but I went, and I think that was a huge milestone in my life. Something shifted there. And the rest is history.
When was that, by the way? The first time you came?
That was 2010. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So a lot has happened. Just even in the years preceding that, you have the Intifada and then the wars and then the Oslo Accord and the Second Intifada and all the other stuff. And okay, so you came to already a very turbulent Israel, and yet, so are you? I mean, okay, it's a nice. I'm biased, okay, but it's a great place. It's a great people. All you can say all those great things about it, but there's it's one thing to say, okay, these guys are okay, and another thing to go to war for them. What
and take so much heat for your support of it.
Yeah. What
and probably your parents also. What are you doing? Why do you have to?
I always say, like, I probably was raised to be a masochistic person. When you work on point shoes all your childhood, you just need some kind of continuous pain in your life. That's how I explain. But
it's very Jewish, by the way.
I know. I did a DNA test whether I have any Jewishness in me, and guess what? I am the only one in Eastern Europe who doesn't even have a 0.01% Jewish.
No.
In her. Yeah, it's great. So I didn't believe the DNA test. So I hired someone to go after my family's history back to the 160s. Nothing. So I kind of like, okay, God, you are funny. Like, anyway, so, that happened. That was a little disappointing in a way. It would have been easier to explain, what I feel and why I feel things. But to answer your question, like, I went to Israel, and you are right. First 2 times it was like I was a tourist. The beaches are nice, Tel Aviv is cool, Jerusalem is exciting. And then the more I went back, the more I started to ask questions. And each time I returned to Europe, I started to, pay attention more on the Israel-related news. And then I saw that in Brussels, beside the Jewish schools, there's always like a big police presence. We went to a Maccabi match, and that's the first time I heard BDS, because they were looking for signatures to boycott Israel. And I was like, damn, guys, I just came to a football match. And I was so already there. My conviction started to grow more and more. And actually, my ex-partner, I think I outgrew him in that sense. And I ask you how PC we need to be. So my experience is that there are those Israelis, who leave Israel and they come to Europe or the US, and their Jewishness kind of stops there, because they say, okay, I served in the IDF, I did my duty for the country. And then they go into the ivory tower and they just they don't understand that there's still anti-Semitism just because they don't want to see it. So what happened is that we went to a supermarket, and so in Europe, you have these international food sections with all the flags, and the Israeli food section was always hidden, or the flag was torn down. And so every time we went to the grocery, I started my little activism there. I put back the Israeli flag, I reorganized the challah and everything, and the hummus, and it's not there, it's not Spanish, it's Israeli. And then I remember a pivoting moment was when I was applying for a job in Brussels, and the HR person told me that if you would like to have better chances to get a job, please take out your Israel connection from your resume. And I was sitting in the park in Brussels and having a conversation one-on-one with God or the universe or whoever, is out there. And I was like, okay, I need to make a decision. And I understood there that I will face closed doors and I will lose a lot of opportunities, but something deep inside me said, you just need to go on this way. So I said, F off. I'm not going to change who I am. I'm not going to work for a company where I cannot say I'm going to have a vacation in Israel, or I cannot say, that I have an Israeli partner or Israeli friend. Like, come on. It's just like such a moral dissonance that on a daily basis, I can't deal with it. So I said no. And then I started to write about my experience and my self-seeking about why I was raised to be an anti-Semite. And it was not a conscious raising by my family or my society. It was just the general environment, And I think here we can go more into the depths, because after all, your podcast is about, the roots of anti-Semitism. I think people they don't really understand the nuances when it comes to anti-Semitism. And you can say that anti-Semitism is just wrong. Sure. But as long as people are people, anti-Semitism will exist because you can't kill it out. There's no chance. However, what you experience in Eastern Europe, now let's focus on my country, Hungary, you will have verbatim anti-Semitism. And if we go back to history, we can understand also in a way why, not justifying it by any means, but you need to understand the psychology. Let me give you an example. My dad was vehemently against the Russian regime. So, he was one of those who went against the regime and sent flyers against the regime. And so he did his activism against the Soviets. And he had two close friends. He trusted them. And now we can go to the archives and see who reported about him. Guess what? Those two friends. And both were Jewish. Which doesn't mean that every Jew was spying on someone, but what I'm trying to get to is that you need a level of intelligence to understand that, okay, just because these two Jews reported about me, I choose not to be an anti-Semite, right? But if we are very honest with ourselves, we know that most people are not emotionally intelligent. So they're going to have one bad experience with a Jew, and they're going to group all the Jews to that. It's the same with me. So many Hungarian hatred is flying around in the US. And so wherever I present as a Hungarian, and not only there as Virág, for most people, I will be the first connection to Hungary. So how would they judge me? They're going to judge most of the Hungarians. And, you need to have intelligence to cross that. So you have this level of anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe, which is primarily rooted in ignorance. And then you have the other type of anti-Semitism, which is rooted in ideology. And that is what you experience now in Western Europe and in the US, where you have a conscious, ideology-driven hatred towards the Jews. The first one is easier to manage, easier to change through education and conversations. The other is way more difficult.
And first of all, this is a very nice analysis of those things. Well, obviously, we go way back in our exploration to really see, we're like, okay, and what was before that, right? And what was before that, and what came before that, right? We're trying to go to the first. The first instance where Jews were singled out as a group. And it seems like from the very beginning, the very root of this group, which started with, you could go back to, all the way to this person called Adam, like the guy in the Bible. Not it wasn't the first person in the world. It was just a guy named Adam who was the first one who discovered something different about the system of nature. Let's put it this way. That's also something that most people don't know. Also, a lot of Jews don't know, that they don't read the Bible in this way. But put that aside, if you fast forward to just Abraham living in Babylon, this very advanced society for its time, right? 3 million people living together and having a very intricate social life, and suddenly something happened which caused this rift between them. And most people chose to just go their separate ways, sort of this mass divorce.
They went from a more simple kind of people. All of a sudden now you have writing and sailboats and the wheel and agriculture. And so it's like, I guess for us today, the internet or something, it was a big...
very advanced. But they were not able to reconcile this new feelings that awakened in them toward one another, this feeling of mistrust. Suddenly this feeling of the familiarity and this familial sense of like, okay,
it's like social media now. It's like trying to sit at the table with your relatives on a holiday when half your family is being fed other social media.
Exactly. Seemingly nothing changed, but everything changed. Suddenly you feel like you can trust the other person, and you're suspicious, and you resent them, and you have all these feelings toward them which you can't explain. And we collectively call those feelings simply the growing of the human ego, that desire to for maximum pleasure at minimum pain, if you will, but at the expense of everyone and everything around you. And it always starts very small and it grows. It keeps growing. This is like an engine of evolution. And out of all those people, one group chose not to run away and separate, but to actually come together even more above this force pushing them apart. And that was the group that rallied around Abraham at the time. And those people already were really just like everyone else. They were just part of all the clans that lived there. They were not genetically different, right? There was no genetic difference to them. In fact, they were united by an ideology. You said ideology, and you're spot on. Ideology is the problem, but it's also the root of the solution, because the ideology of the Jews, at the time there were Hebrews, later Jews, that ideology was an ideology of love that covers all crimes, right? Love above the friction that naturally pushes us apart.
It's not obvious to everyone that that like world peace or loving the other one. It's not just a natural. It's a man-made. Well, it comes from somewhere, but it's not in every single person everywhere just naturally. We were totally instinctual apes, and we evolved. But there was one group of people who, the first world peace group, who said we all have to
first hippies
love the other as love the other as yourself, and that's who we're saying this group.
What is the biggest stereotype against you guys? Is that you are behind all the wars and behind the bad in the world.
Absolutely. Now, so wait.
So open it up more. So
just see Charlie Kirk and what's going on around that. It's insane, and I am still sitting on a video about that. It's such a BS blood libel if you think about it. And people, again, they love conspiracy theories. And again, it's easy to scapegoat the Jews. But if you think about this, what goes on back and forth, Candace Owens, Tucker, but even the Jewish parties in this equation, honestly, none of them were friends to Charlie. Because if they were, they would not have opened up personal discussions just to prove their own ego. They would just let life do its own course, and the truth will prevail eventually. And what Charlie is saying in those messages, that, okay, I might need to step away from pro-Israel niche. It's nothing anti-Israel or nothing anti-Semitic. It's business as usual. If anyone has ever worked with Jewish nonprofits and they understand how fundraising works in those organizations, you see the same thing. Fundraisers bring in the money and they want to manipulate the way the organization works. Easy. It's not a rocket science. And it's up to the organization whether they say, okay, no, you are just bringing in the money and I'm okay. I'm the leader here and I am the boss. And maybe you're going to lose that money. And maybe you're going to say, okay, I'm just going to do as you say. So when Charlie said I'm stepping away from a pro-Israelism, he meant pro-Israel donors. And that's totally fine. It doesn't make him an anti-Semite. It doesn't make his whole perspective on Israel or what he believed in changes. Even if sometimes you disagree with Bibi, it doesn't mean you hate Israel. That's meaning that you have a critical thinking. And, it's mind-boggling to me how this absolutely business as usual equation that we see day after day in the US with nonprofits was blown out of proportion, and now Charlie was murdered because he said something against Israel. I mean, how many people would be murdered by now? Come on.
Well, but that's exactly the thing. I mean, that's exactly what we're saying. What you call business as usual is human nature at work. Okay.
Right.
It's and by the way, this is not even a judgment against. This is a sort of the starting point. Okay. Everybody wants maximum pleasure, minimum pain, right? That's the formula. Humans.
I disagree with that because I'm such an opposite. And this is why I have this masochistic instinct, when I first started to talk about Israel, it was so easy to label me that, you just love Israel because you dated an Israeli. So I said, okay, I don't want to be labeled like this. So I did a whole master's in Jewish studies as the first non-Jew ever at Touro University. And the dean was interviewing me for 3 hours, not understanding what I want there when I have no background in this. I have no yeshiva education, no bachelor. And he said after 3 hours, I just understand. I need to let you do this. And, and then he offered me a scholarship, which I'm forever grateful for because that is how I could attend the university. But I'm always choosing the hard way. And you won't see me do it. Yeah.
By the way, just so we're clear, pleasure means, it doesn't necessarily mean, it could be whatever gives you pleasure. So if you enjoy a little bit of pain, that's okay. That's your pleasure point. That's okay. Nobody's again, but the point is, we all function on that, some more, some less. The higher up you go up the corporate ladder, the political ladder, the bigger the ego is, right? The bigger the ego that will demand this kind of fulfillment. So some people are satisfied with food, give me good food, and I'm, sex, family, money, honor, power, knowledge. That's kind of like how those desires grow, and that's how people are motivated. And so that's the starting point. So we are not surprised by anything that's happening. None of it is surprising. People are simply gradually revealing their nature, and that, by the way, is a good thing. We call it in what we study, we call it revelation of evil, but you can call it a diagnosis of the illness. Okay, this is at least you have a clear diagnosis. This is the issue. That's what makes it very difficult for humans to get along. That's why the rate of divorce is rising. That's why we see this friction in every area of human endeavor. Seemingly, you could argue we're at a point where we have all the resources. We could be living like kings, right, all over the world. What's stopping us from doing it? There's some internal engine that takes different shapes, right? You can call it politics, religion, doesn't matter. It takes a shape whereby a person or a group say, we want to feel good our way at the expense of everybody else's. And those clashes.
It's fascinating how you approach it, because I don't hear many people do that. For that, you need, again, a lot of pausing and the ability to listen. And I need to tell you, I come across as very outspoken and harsh on my videos, but if you see,
I love your videos, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But behind the scenes, I have so much compassion that sometimes I don't know where to put it. I sat with a guy from Gaza in the car for 3 hours, trying to make sense of how he's thinking. Why is he thinking that way? And even though he is finding refuge in the US and without, jeopardizing his privacy and safety, he is in the US because of Hamas, and yet he could not say a bad word against Hamas. And so trying to understand why. When I did interviews in East Jerusalem with Arabs, they all said they have a good life. They had a job, they have housing, blah, blah, blah. And yet they said, we hate Israel. And I'm like, you just listed all the things that you have good in your life. And the ultimate common denominator was that it was a principle to hate Israel. And that point, these were the nuances which led me to my next milestones in my own allyship or conviction and how I talk about this. Because what we saw in the last 2 years, people going behind that pseudo-compassionateness of how the Palestinian kids, if you would understand anything about a situation, you would understand that by your stance against Israel, you're not saving those Palestinian kids. You are throwing them under the bus. Sure. And you are, part of the problem.
If we look at hydrogen, which is a combustible gas, and oxygen, which is a flammable gas, nobody would ever think that if you can make them fit together correctly, you're going to get liquid. It's like this emergent quality.
Life-giving liquid.
Yeah, it's like an emergent, it's like a next level thing. And what we're up against is this next emergent level for humanity, because we will all bang our heads into the wall, 24/7 with our list of facts. It seems that we're in a reality now where it doesn't matter how many facts we have. It doesn't matter how many, how much evidence we have. It's almost like whatever fact we have, it turns against us fivefold and comes back in our face. And so somehow these, like hydrogen and oxygen, these things have to turn it into water. And it led us both on this journey of trying to understand what's going on and how many times we can bang our heads together until we emerged into something almost like a spiritual answer to what's going on. But it's you can call it spiritual, but it's really the most natural thing for us as well. And that's why, like, when you say, like, I didn't find any Jew in me, to us, we didn't, visibly laugh, but it's clear it's in you. It's so your flesh doesn't have some marker. It's doesn't say anything about the quality of what's going on in your soul, because, like you said about this guy who you dated for 6 years, in his soul, it's not as bright as in your soul, right? So we're not even talking so much about the flesh body, although we have to consider it on some level. But if we look at that from that level, and we realize that using facts is not going to get us to where we need to get. And of course, we still have to do it. We still have to do all the things in this world. But where is humanity heading? And what do people expect of Jews, for lack of a better word? If humanity needs to get to a point where we're not, like, there's plenty of money, there's plenty of food, there's plenty of land, there's plenty of everything for everyone, and yet every new invention, it just is used to exploit people. Every new invention, it's just used to make profit off of people, and the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. And is that, people are asking themselves, why, and who are we going to turn to? So the world is unconsciously turning towards the Jews with a demand, like, there needs to be some emergent thing that happens in humanity. We need to get beyond just, it's insane that at this point in history, we're still just fighting each other with guns, and it's like, it's so childish, right? So then it begs the question, like, what is it that the world is demanding of Israel, and what, or Jews, and what is it that Jews and Israel have that the world needs? And I'm not talking about technology, and I'm not talking about Nobel Prizes. I'm not talking about that. What is the inner thing that the world needs that the Jews don't even realize that they have, or some maybe realize that they have, that demand, that anti-Semitism will not stop, that pressure will not stop until that quality. Yeah, please.
I tell you what, my take on that. First of all, everything you say just makes me note down ideas. It's like my brain is 100%, in circulation here. But the first thing came to mind is the love of life. It's something that you can't express and explain to people. The fact that I went to Israel a couple of months after the war broke out, and my biggest takeaway from that trip, which was, as I said, not my first trip ever, but definitely a very meaningful one, is that regardless of what happened, nobody had an eye filled with hatred and wanting revenge. Not even the people in the kibbutzim. Was it hard? Were they in pain? Yes. And they said, okay, now we need to pause in our take, rebuilding trust towards our neighbor is going to take time, if ever possible again. But there was no seeking revenge that, okay, let's kill them. Instead, you chose life again. And for me, as a non-Jew, this is something I always envied in the purest, most beautiful sense of the word, that Jews have that. Why is that? That regardless of you being shot at from 4 different directions, you're still one of the happiest nations out there. People don't like happy people. When you are successful and happy,
if they can't be happy like you, if they will think that there's a way for them to get some of the happiness or all of it, eventually it'll be a different story.
But also, like you said, about East Jerusalem, it's not just a house and a job, because even if I have a house and a job, there's something else as a human that I need, some other fulfillment that I need.
Yes. And you ask me why I do what I do. And I think here it comes into the picture. In order to have a fulfilled life, you always need a bigger cause than yourself. And the moment you don't have that, that's when depression comes in.
So what is that? What can that be?
Hold on, let's savor what she's saying. This is something good. This is good. So a lot of people don't see that.
On my personal level, when people say, oh, you get paid, or you do, let's break the news. I never got paid. And in fact, I have my personal frustration within the pro-Israel niche, which I hate calling it that way because that would automatically mean I'm Palestinian, but it's a whole different topic. But I never got money. I never got paid for my views. I'm not in the influencer market because I detach myself from that because it's a dirty world at the moment. Let's be very frank and non-PC again. The war benefited many.
Oh, yeah.
On both sides. And as long as we're not okay to say this, you are sustaining the problem. So I lost primarily because of my stand with Israel. I lost friendships, relationships, work opportunities. But I let, our higher self or the universe to equate the situation for me that. And I know that I get a lot and I get a lot of love also. So I'm not going to diminish that or minimize that. But at the end of the day, to circle back what Israel has, it all comes down to the psychology of jealousy. And people really, really minimize that aspect in people, that people are jealous on Israelis or Jews because they can be happy regardless of what. You can live in the moment. You can be successful and live in the moment in the middle of a war,
I would reframe that to say that maybe it's even deeper feeling of unconscious feeling of dependency. I would say it this way: dependency. That you feel that somehow your good fortune, your chance of reaching a higher degree in life, not materially, but internally, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, somehow depends on this group. Not that they're happy and no, they can be happy here and I'll be happy there. No, that somehow there's a connection between my level of happiness and well-being and their level of happiness and well-being, but that connection is broken. Something is not letting us be part of this thing.
But I think in general, psychologically, most people who are lacking a level of healthy self-confidence and health and groundedness, they still feel that the more you drag the other person down, the higher you get. You see?
No, that's a natural. That's a natural mechanism of the human ego. Absolutely, I'm always intuitively, automatically. Doesn't matter, at any moment, I have an internal calculator that always tries to keep me somehow above some other person. I can't be above everyone, but I can be a little better than this one. I can bring this one down and feel myself a little up. That's a natural mechanism of that same egoistic engine that we discussed, right? So that's working in humans. But you know what the difference is between humans and animals?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm curious. Maybe
obviously the cognitive ability is that you have a choice as a human.
Cognitive.
Is this a joke or is this like
No. I'm going somewhere with this. It's not a joke.
Off the air, we tell a lot of dirty jokes.
Yeah. First of all, cognitive abilities. Dolphins have a bigger brain, so it's not. It's hard to say that cognitive abilities. And plus, we have some people that clearly their cognition lacks. So maybe it's not cognition. What else do you think it is?
Honestly, for me, that I'm a very pragmatic person in this sense that you have a choice, but animals do. But
do you have a choice? Let's talk about choice just for a second, just in parentheses, because you mentioned the environment earlier on in the show. No, we're actually products of our environment. So you have very, very little choice in what you do.
But you do have a choice. I am a clear example of that. And I'm always saying that you are the product of your own environment, but you have the choice to stop that.
I will make it more precise. You respond to the environment, sometimes for, sometimes against, but you always bounce against the environment. That still doesn't make it a choice. You'll always choose what feels good to you over what doesn't feel good. If you think you have a choice, it just means that you don't know what will be the better option, what will give you more pleasure. Because if you knew what will give you more pleasure, you will always 100% choose what gives you pleasure. So we can't say that we honestly have free choice. We can say that we're confused, and that gives us the illusion of choice. However, I'm not taking away from the agency of people. I'm just saying, that's a necessary illusion. What I'm saying is that what separates us, that we are products of the
parentheses. We'll do a whole other show on that another time.
That's close parentheses. I'm saying we have very little free choice. We do have a choice, and you are right about one thing. As humans, unlike rocks or plants or even animals, we can put ourselves in a different environment. We have just enough energy to I can go plant myself elsewhere, right? That's a very meaningful choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so
what's the main difference between the animals and the human? I'm still
no, that's not the main difference. It's
what is speak. That's the point. Get to the point.
I'm trying to. You stop. And no, so so there's a few things. You could say that that's one thing, but that's not a huge. That's more like a feature. The fundamental difference is that, first of all, animals don't ask about the meaning of their lives. Okay, so that's not a cognitive thing. That's a much deeper quality, right? Why do I live? Why do I suffer? Where is it going? Where am I coming from? All those things. Animals don't have it. Animals live, and that's it. In fact, many people still live without that question, right? Yeah. Okay, but they have the potential for that question, and it was awakened in them as children. Probably
if our podcast will reach them.
And it was extinguished, and then it awakens. When someone close dies, the question come up. You bury it again, right? So that question is there. But the other thing the thing that really works in us, even when we're not, even when we can be as dumb or as base as we can, still. Humans have a feeling of the other. That's something that no other thing in nature has. Okay, everything just exists.
Explain because
like animals also feel each other.
Dogs feel things.
No.
Horses feel things.
No. Everybody feels things. Everybody feels things. But I have the ability to feel your suffering or feel your pleasure. Animals don't have it. They have a feeling that there's another, a horse knows there's another horse here, and I can.
Horse knows that I'm fearful.
Yeah. But that's not an empathy. I can actually, right? I can feel through you. I can also learn from you. And again, animals have very little of that. Really, the feeling of the other, the feeling that I can derive pleasure from caring for the other. That doesn't exist. It exists instinctively between a mother and a baby, again, as a mechanism. But beyond that...
On this premise, let's ask the question, what happened to the world in the last 2 years when this was absolutely missing from our societies?
So I don't think it was missing. I think it was like everything else. It was misused. People... The thing is that... as humans, by the way, this was also the main difference between Homo sapiens and the Neanderthal man. Everybody's like, what's the difference? There were humans. Everybody was human. Yes, but they were not quite there. They still lived life much like animals, right? Very, practical, pragmatic. There's me, there's you, and we do things and all that. But Homo sapiens was able to harness that feeling, that sensation of the other, that natural feeling of belonging to something greater, as you said. That doesn't exist in other creatures. And in Jews, it's even more heightened. This is a quality that was developing over the years. And so all of humanity needs to get to a place where we really feel the other as ourselves. Jews are already a step ahead of that. We're not fully there yet, but we're the ones leading the pack in a way. We need to lead the pack there. But right now, what's coming to the surface is the sense that I feel like I have a feel I can't live independent of you. That's what's happening. That's what we're seeing in the world. We have these strong emotions about others, people in other sides of the world. We get riled up by all these things that have to do with other people, where we should naturally not, as you said, they're over there. I should be here. I should be happy with what. No, I can't. I feel that somehow my life is connected to your life, connected to their life.
I think what you're saying is absolutely, obviously true and an axiom in and of itself, but most people are lacking the level of emotional awareness that would need to actually comprehend what you are talking about here. And where I would lead back the last 2 years for, and why I do feel that the level of compassionateness was missing, is because people were not here, they were here. And in their brain, they were told the very black and white worldview that you have the white people, the people of color, the colonizer, the colonized, the rich, the poor. This is the only narrative that you could hear, especially in the United States. And people couldn't even find the shade of grays in between. Nothing. Yeah. And I always say, as a non-Jew, you can hate Israel as much as you want. You can hate the Jews. What do I care? In a sense, at the end of the day, be selfish. and love yourself enough to understand that the people who are killing the Jews would kill you on the spot as well. So at least be selfish to get this point. You know, like you don't need to love Israel the way I love, but be a little bit more
self-aware. You're saying self-aware.
And selfish, you know. Just the other day, I made the video that went pretty viral about the fact that all these pro-Palestinians out there, honestly, what we listened for the last 2 years, your hands are filled with blood because you were cheering for the people who now, 2-3 days after signing a treaty, are killing their own people, cheering for it, shooting their own people who were okay to have peace. And so for me, again, your hatred against Jews and Israel was stronger than the minimal common sense. And I don't understand when ISIS came up, you know, with the videos back then, beheading people, everybody knew what was okay and what was not, what was good and what was bad. But when the same jihadist cult is doing something against Jews and Israel, suddenly your moral compass is broken.
Because, and this is the great, I think this is the sort of this is where
we need to like polish this whole thing, Virág, that you just said, because here, you know, before we kind of put our, you know, whipped cream and cherry on it, like you really clarify very, very clearly what's going on here. It's like they would kill me. I almost had this like idea for like a show or some short movies or something where you have people who are supporting something and then you allow their worldview to actually play out like what they want to play out. And you go like 3 years into the future and they're prisoners or they've been killed, you know, like.
Sorry to interrupt, but most people would still remember, our generation for sure, those 2 British girls who went to volunteer to ISIS.
Yeah.
What happened to them? That in and of itself should be the story to tell in every high school. And, you know, I get DMs all day long. Why I'm not getting invited more to speak? I tell you. And here, because you told me that you are looking for the solution also against anti-Semitism. I am way too harsh for most of the Jewish organizations. They want people, and they loved inviting me as long as I was saying what everybody wanted to hear. And again,
what do they want to hear, by the way?
Yeah, well, just give us
the soft. First of all, we are in America. People love Hollywood, right? So the end always needs to be hope and good and stuff. But you cannot say out things loudly. You cannot say Islamization because you are an Islamophobe. You need to say radicalization of a certain group of people. You know, that's just not going to take us from 1 to 2. And most conservative voices in this niche are absolutely put on the side since the war has broken out. I never, and here I want to clarify something. In the introduction, you said I still work for JNF. I don't work for JNF. So before anyone wants to sue me for working for JNF and saying what I'm saying, I'm not working there anymore.
Okay.
So,
noted.
You have never met a group of people who will say, we don't invite that speaker because they are too liberal. But you will find lots of Jewish organizations saying, we are not going to invite XYZ because they are too conservative and they don't necessarily hate Trump, or in my case, my government, Orban. And it doesn't matter that both of the governments are actually doing a lot of good for the Jews, and you don't need to love Orban or Trump, doesn't matter. But you need to be factually accurate that they are doing things for the Jewish community and the safety of them. And so this dichotomy, so as long as you are supporting the liberal speakers but diminishing the other side, you are not going to get the joinment of the communities, both Jews among themselves, but more importantly, the Jews and non-Jews. Having conferences about anti-Semitism from Jews to Jews, that's when I usually laugh out loud. Because tell me what is the purpose of that conversation? Jews know what anti-Semitism is. The people who don't understand what feels anti-Semitic to a Jew is the non-Jew. So you can be a journalist and write these big words out to the world that another blood libel happened. Most non-Jews have no freaking clue what blood libel is. Absolutely understandable. It's not in your proxy. It's not an interest to you. But what the LGBTQ and the Black community did perfectly is that they went from spot to spot explaining until they were, sweating what feels racist to them, what feels homophobic to them. And the Jewish community needs to have this kind of conversations and educate the non-Jewish people. This feels anti-Semitic, but again, not in a way that also happens in this sphere, that whoever says something is automatically an anti-Semite, because that doesn't work. Most people are ignorant and they don't know better. Explain to them, and then we can take it from there. If it's a repetitive act, then it's
I have a prediction. First of all, if you can land a job doing it, more power to you. We'll support you. But I have a prediction that none of it is gonna work.
Why?
Because the relationship to Jews is different. That's the one thing that we're able to see and show when you look at history, look at historic patterns, and when you read the words of Jewish sages, because Jews have a specific role to play. Again, not because they're special, but because you need a group, you need the representatives from all the nations to unite around Abraham back then to start this process, right? That will now come to completion in the complete world. We used to be a tiny, right, a city state, a little, Babylon was one place, a localized group of people. Then they covered the globe. Now humanity has matured. The egos have reached their level of ripeness, that everybody's now able to now recognize the illness, that egoistic, that my views at the expense of everyone and everything. Doesn't matter where you are, you're black, LGBTQ, environmentalist, pro-Palestinian, against this, doesn't matter. My voice needs to be heard and the loudest. That feeling that you're unable to see that you're part of something bigger, as you said. So that illness cannot heal itself in the same way that everybody else is kind of securing their spot, at the table, because the hate against the Jews is not the same kind of hate. It's a hate that comes from, as we said, this unconscious feeling that somehow Jews have something going on, and I need to be part of it, and I can't. Subconsciously, again, most people don't know that. They just
need to be part of it, but I can't. I think is very much an important factor that lots of people don't talk about. And during my 10 plus years journey in this, do you know how many times my non-Jewish friends told me, how are you still not an anti-Semite? And it's a joke, but also not a joke. Tell you why. I speak better Hebrew than most American Jewry from the Upper West Side, okay? They know their shul Hebrew, okay, fine. I know more about Jewish history than most of them. And it's not to be cocky, but just as a pure fact.
Right.
Yet, obviously, I am never going to be part of the group. I can be admired to be an ally, but eventually, it's the Jews together. I can get mad. It hurts sometimes, obviously, as a human, but I can get mad, or I can understand the beauty of it and actually wish that my own people, even just the Hungarians, would be such a close knit that, you would go to fire for the other. But most people, including, my non-Jewish friends, when they hear something that I'm sharing with them, they're like, oh, it's negative. And so most people would translate it as negative, instead of saying that, hey, actually, I'm freaking fucking jealous of the Jews that they can, meet in the middle of Nicaragua and then have a Shabbat dinner and become friends for life. I wish we would have that. Instead, two Hungarians meet in the same city and they would be like, I don't know you, So it's very important how people translate things into themselves, but it goes back to the psychology. How much self-awareness do you have? Because it's my choice to get mad that I'm never going to belong fully, or it's my choice to understand.
So here's where the magic happens. You don't need, you can't raise the awareness of everybody individually. It'll take too long, and there's no need to do it. We're actually already interconnected and interdependent, and we already influence each other in profound ways. Okay, this has been shown, already demonstrated by network science. As already 15 years ago, they started seeing the effects of that.
Like, it's very subtle. Friends smokes, you're more likely to smoke. Yeah. If all these kind of connections that we don't even realize.
People around you, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So this goes way deep, like to the point that you can't really measure it directly with the instruments that we have. But we are interconnected in immense ways. And I'll say now that I'll drop the bomb. I'll say basically this: the only way to change what's happening in the world and to change the attitude toward that negative attitude toward the Jews is not through incessant explanation like the LGBTQ and the blacks and all that. No, if the Jews actually play that role of being united to perfection, or almost to near perfection, this will automatically raise them and the whole world with them to that higher level of awareness that you're talking about.
So the explanation part, I think there was a little, maybe I conveyed it badly. What I meant by the explanation is, if you go online, most of Jewish influencers will complain how the non-Jews are not understanding this and how the non-Jews are not getting it.
Right.
That's where you need the explanation. And I'm not talking about a Hasbara, but the fact that you would need more conferences which are interfaith. And again, rocket science. Interfaith doesn't mean that everyone in the States needs to be evangelical, because what the conferences are about are either Jews to Jews or Jews and evangelical. What about with the other millions of people who don't fall into any of them, right?
Right.
And so you would need this kind of discussions. Like, okay, if I tell you this, that you have a big nose, do you get hurt? Does it feel anti-Semitic? And if so, why? And then you can go back, to the show and explain why. But most people are so ignorant that they would just say anything to be heard, but they don't even understand what they are saying. So that is where the explanation comes in. And in and of itself, the Hasbara business, I think it's faulty from the
100%.
up. It's the biggest mistake I think Israel has ever done in terms of its own PR. And as I said, explaining why you need to love Israel, that gives me the ick, because the more I tell you to love something, the more I'm gonna dafka hate it, because that's how we are. So, it's just like,
of course. See,
I'm not gonna love Israel because of the cherry tomatoes. It's just insane.
No. We used to say if you love someone, then you look for reasons to justify that feeling, and if you hate him, you look for reasons to justify it. So
exactly.
it's a mood effort, which is why, like I said, we put our efforts on explaining, first of all, to Jews, that the Jews need to live up to that word, Jew from the word Yehudi, Yichud, unity. That's where it comes from. That's the deeper meaning of that word. And it's only a group that can show that above the growing ego, above the friction, the natural friction, which you see in every relationship, everywhere around the world these days, if you can form a bond of love above it, I don't like you, but I love you. If you can show that, and then be an example to everyone around you on how to do it, that's it. You fix all the world problems.
What is your message to people like Gabor Mate?
What about Gabor Mate?
Like, what would be your message to a person like that who is like now poster child of the Palestinians, and he is a Jew himself?
I wouldn't bother talking to him in the meantime. I think the whole thing is.
No. First of all, I know him very of him very well. We all thought of inviting him to the show, but we. Frankly, we don't have the time to talk about childhood trauma, from now till eternity. Everybody's traumatized. It's not the point. And you can't, we're talking about a more subtle, but much deeper form of change, of correction. You see, you're not going to go and correct every single person's unique set of flaws. No, we just need to create an environment that champions that over everything else. Just like our environment today celebrates, riches and wealth and power, we want an environment that celebrates this ability to love above all the little crimes that happen under the surface.
Isn't that too utopistic of a view? Like, I'm not disagreeing with the vision here. It's just like, is it something, a utopian dream?
Oh, absolutely utopian.
100%.
100%. But we have a secret weapon. We have nature on our side. This is
the concept is this is where it's going anyway.
Right.
The concept is this is the unfolding, but the value that we have now. When you look at the development of humanity, when we look at our own lives, when we look at those times where we went through so much struggle. When we look back, we say, wow, I learned so much. Like, wow, I don't even recognize who I was back then until after it now. So when you look at this small group that went through the cauldron of the development of humanity, they got churned through Egypt, they got churned through Persia, they got churned through Greece, they got churned through Babylon, they got churned through Rome, they got churned through Spain, churned through the Nazis, right? So through all of that, they went, they went through, I was trying to think of like a kitchen appliance that would do this, like a pressure cooker, you know, instead of having to keep the food for 8 hours overnight, you do it in the pressure cooker, and in 45 minutes, the meat is like butter, you know, it's like, so that's all we're talking about. We're talking about now, and by how important it is to connect to people like you into the system, because we're looking at you as more of a Jew than this other clown you just mentioned a few minutes ago. Everyone serves their role in the who is a Jew. Everyone serves their role in the network. So there's no way of getting around that. Even Hamas and everyone will eventually, not at this generation, but eventually have to come to this thing. But we have the ability now, those who are awakening to it, to not have to be pushed forward by another couple centuries of ass kicking and nuclear bombs and shit like that, that we can now consciously come together. And if we do it even in a small group at first, it ripples through the whole network. We don't understand, for example, the power of thought. We don't understand how, because there's nothing to measure it. We don't have tools to measure those things. But
we are the tools. You are the tool. He's the tool. I'm the tool.
I'm so loving this approach. It's just like, you know, sorry to interrupt, but something came to my mind.
Hard to make money off of, by the way, but
how we evolve as people, you know, like when you are in your 20s, you always think, at least like my experience, the louder you are, the more truth you are conveying, or you're going to convince people. As I turned 30, I was like, okay, going more into psychology. I was like, okay, less online, more one-on-one, and how we can actually change that one person, that one neighbor, and then it's a ripple effect. And I just recently turned 40, and again, you know, the priorities shift, and again, how I look at the world and how I see the more matrix and the complexities. And I absolutely love the approach you are presenting here. Obviously, it's very unorthodox, let's be true, you know, like you put it in the organizational world, and the husband world, people will be like, what are you talking about? After all, as you said, it's an ego game, and the algorithm is driving everyone.
It's the next step. By the way, it's the next step in what you described. At first, you think you need to shout and change the world. Then you see, I can't change the world. I'll change my city. Then I can change my city. I'll change my building. I can change my building. You know, maybe I'll change a neighbor. And then you said, no, you know what? Maybe I'll change myself.
Yeah.
And when you change yourself, the whole world changes. And
what
that's
and how true it is.
And again, we didn't invent it.
Yeah, and cliches are cliches for a reason.
No, but it's not a cliche. Like we said at the very beginning, and we stick by it. By the way, we encourage you, everyone else, to listen to those first 22 episodes, because we really break down the laws of the system of nature, laws that people have found before all that noise that is just obscuring it. The noise didn't change the law; it's just made it a little harder to see the law. But the laws exist, just like gravity, electromagnetism, they're all there. They govern human relationship and human evolution and where we came from and where we're going. So if you see them, it becomes very easy to start moving in that direction. And you already have that inner compass. And we believe, we see a lot of people have that inner compass already awakened. They have that extra point that's now able to, you know, move in that field that is calling us.
On this, Mary, something came to my mind from, again, like we talk about, you know, like your own life and how it manifests on the macro level. Like when you face the hardship, the first instinct is to fight back even more. And eventually when the solution comes, when you just, you know, lay back. And I'm like thinking on the big picture here, if you would cut out all this anger now towards Hamas or the people who are not getting the bigger picture, and we would just like collectively like drop it, maybe the resistance would just you know, lead to the solution.
Anger against each other. You know how much anger is in Israel right now? That's always, if you look at history, That's the one point I'll make, because everything else you can listen to on those early episodes. But whenever we are apart, that's when the trouble comes. That pressure cooker is sealed off and turned on until we just let it go, and and then we get like 40 years of quiet or whatever. And then again, if we don't consciously work on that, our nature is going to take over that me against everyone else.
The problem that we have right now is that, before microscopes, you couldn't explain to someone that there's germs on your hands and that you should wash, and people were getting sick, but there was no clear reason why. Then you get a microscope, you say, oh, my hands are covered in bacteria and viruses. And so it wasn't until you had the tool, even because the eyes can't see the issue. So right now it's the same kind of thing. We're looking like through a microscope at reality, and we see something, but it's nobody else has a microscope yet. So it's not clear to everyone that we're all connected. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's a cliche. We're all connected. We're all one family, but that's where it's going. So there is also, so Spieg, I just want to, on the one hand, it is all about this interconnection and this relaxing into it. There is another piece that even though we're ahead of the curve, we do still need to be, you do have this role, Virág, to get out there and keep saying it, because otherwise no one's going to know about the microscope. But the germs, the germs. Sorry. So our work, our personal work, which is more qualitatively, for everything that we can do qualitative, it's worth like a billion people's, a quantity of a billion people, because what are they doing? They're watching Netflix and they're running to get a, chicken McNugget and whatever. So what we can do qualitatively, we carry millions of people on our back quantitatively. So our inner work is one half. And the other half is also just constantly trying to spread it out there so that eventually, when everyone's ready, they'll be able to, the answer will be there for everyone. We can't force it on them, but we have to spread it out there so that even though it seems like we're shouting into the wind, at some point, like all of those scientists who did all this work, even though no one understood what they were talking about, and now everything is built on that work, we have to get this out there so that as people start to ask that question more and more, why am I alive? What is the purpose of this? Is this what it's all about? So that so some answers will be there for them.
I know we are short on time, but just and I know I blacked out on it because other thought. Never mind, just go on. It will come back if it will come back. But I had something really like on my tongue, and then I just forgot.
First of all, you can always come back. We'd love
please
to have
come
you
back.
Yeah, we have love to have you again. That's one thing. The other thing is, as Seth was saying, there's no coercion in love. You can't make someone love you. You have to invest in them against a lot of hardships, and then years later you find out if you did a good job. But mostly you lead by example. That's how parents is.
The thought came back, and I just don't want to interject here because my experience during the last 2 years was a little bit of a catch-22. The most hateful people online were the ones who were in meditation, yoga, and mothers. So the wellness industry, who should be the spiritual, point of reference that, okay, I'm heading towards that, and mothers who are there to raise the next generation and who should be filled with compassion. And I did my own little statistics about that, checking the comments and checking whether they are bots or not and real people. And the last 2 years showed me that these people were the most hateful online during the war.
And again, it's not their fault. Do
you have? Hold on. Do you have any reason why, or some hypothesis why that is?
Blows my mind, especially the mothers. Like, when I saw that they have a newborn, and I was just thinking that you have a newborn and you have the desire to comment something hateful about the hostages. And I just, like, no matter how I approach it, I could not explain.
Again, it's a twisted. You have to. again, we don't have time to open it up, but this is really one of the features of the ego, or as we call it, where we come from, the will to receive. Okay, it's called the will to receive. It's the desire to receive pleasure. It gets twisted. It twists on itself, like like the serpent eating its own tail, or like cancer, right? So we got to the point. It evolved. It was the engine of development for humanity for many eons, for millennia, and it was good. It was good. All the friction, all the wars. That's how humans evolved and got better. That cooking, that slow cooking that Seth was talking about, right? That was the fire, the flame under the pot. That was the will to receive growing. One thing, I want more pleasure from this, from that, in this way, in that way. Now I'll do it like this. Now I'll work harder. Now I'll take someone else. I'll enslave someone who worked for me. Now I'll free the slaves. Now I'll do this. Now it's all expressions of that same quality. And now it got to a point where if we don't change how we use it, you can't change the substance itself, but the way you use it, the direction of it, if you don't change it, it starts to eat itself. And that's why you're seeing exactly those who were supposed to lead the pack actually doing the opposite, because they don't have that answer. That answer exists only in very few people in humanity. And like I said, Jewish sages have it. Even Jews themselves don't know who they are and what their role
Gabor,
is.
This guy,
like Gabor, they're trying. They have a strong. They have immense feelings. This Gabor guy is very sensitive. They. That's why you said, "Oh, Jews, why did they start all the revolutions? Oh, we love peace, but we start all the revolutions." That's dichotomy that exists within the Jew, because they feel so much, but without the education, the knowledge of their true essence and what they're here to do and how to do it, it always comes out misguided. That's why you have the biggest anti-Semites are Jews. And it's because they really try hard. I can't blame them. I'm blaming myself for not getting the message out that the only solution is to change ourselves, to start loving, because it's in us. It's in our essence. We have to change the direction of this will to receive, eradicate that egoistic direction, that intention for myself. We have to.
And that goes for everyone, not only Jews.
It goes for everyone who feels it. We say it out loud, but first and foremost for those who are externally considered as Jews, because again, the system needs someone to lead the pack. If you're already born into that, that's your.
If you ever mention that out to a non-Jewish world, and I know we need to close, so this can be part two.
Don't worry,
that sentiment in and of itself can be taken as why I hate the Jews.
Of course,
yeah, Leo, you're not so good at delivering that line in a way that's.
That's why we have Virág. She's a great writer and speaker. She will package it nice.
Basically, in the most natural way. Anybody who feels it needs to do it first, and then the whole system will naturally. Like when a baby's developing inside the.
Honestly, even with me, after so many years within the Jewish communities, I had writing to me something the other day that. We the Jews have this saying that I don't remember what was the saying. It doesn't matter, but I get these comments that we the Jews, and eventually the saying is literally just be a decent human being. So it's nothing to do with Jews per se. So even me as a non-Jew reading that, I'm like, dang, it's like, don't make yourself so different than us because we have the same saying. So I'm just telling you that people who are like less involved in the communities, it is.
But Virág,
when you talk like that.
But I'll tell you, you shouldn't be afraid of that. You should go. We had a guest here. Who was it, Seth? Jonah Platt. He said, go full Jew. He said, go full Jew. Meaning, don't try to hide it. Don't try to, no, it is what it is, but it's not from a place of superiority. You actually need to serve humanity. You need to be the first.
Again, just as I know that many will misuse and they will present it as a superiority.
Okay. I don't care about that.
To fuel more. You should, because eventually it fuels more anti-Semitism. And again, you are big on psychology, so you will understand why. And then it's just harder to come back. If everyone can be a decent human being, I think we would have a better future than.
We have the small advantage. There's only very few Jews and so many others. So if we work really, really fast and we get all the Jews on board, everybody will also flip before they have a chance to kill all the Jews. So that's our master plan. That's our master plan.
In a nutshell, that's the plan. So.
I put a quote in the chat. We ask every guest to read a quote from the sources. This one is from Kabbalist Yehuda Ashlag. He was one of the greatest sages. Maybe you've heard of him.
Yes,
so he's the teacher of the teacher of our teacher. Okay.
By the way, that's where our whole worldview comes from, is these kind of teachings.
Yeah, we study Kabbalah. It's not a secret. And Kabbalists.
100%. I can sense it from you.
Okay, so there you go. So Kabbalists were those scientists of human desire, and they understood. They wrote about those things. Humanity wasn't ready. Now everybody's ready. So that's why we feel like we can, charge ahead. So if you do us the honor of reading this quote, and then you can say whatever you want, and then we'll close.
Sure. When all human beings agree to abolish and eradicate their will to receive for themselves and have no other desire but to bestow upon their friends, all worries and jeopardy in the world would cease to exist, and we would all be assured of a whole and wholesome life. Amen.
I got chills.
Wow. Just in brackets, like whenever I'm going through hardships, I still go back to these people as the non-Jew as well, so...
We would consider you a Jew.
Yeah, 100%. Inside and out. That's the Jew function.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, Virág.
Thank you. Really.
Wow, such a special person, such a great friend, I hope, moving forward. And please follow Virág on her on social media. We'll put all her links in the description. She's doing amazing work. Go support her. Give her a job if you can. We need her employed and in full in full health to support the Jewish cause. And obviously, if you're new to the Jew Function, listen to the first 22 episodes, and most importantly, leave a comment. It shows the algorithm that it's an important conversation. When you just leave a few words, just leave a comment. You like it, you dislike it, just leave a comment. It's good on YouTube, on Spotify, everywhere we have videos. It helps. It will get the message out, and the technology is here to support us. So it's on you. And we're the Jew Function. We'll see you all next week. We have a great line of guests coming up this month, so stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye, Virág.